Hello and welcome, everyone. It's wonderful to have your company here today. We have a wonderful session for you this evening, or today, or this morning, this afternoon, wherever you're calling in from. My name is Morag Gamble, and I'm calling in from the unceded lands of the Gubbi Gubbi for this fantastic session that we have today on deep ecology, permaculture, and exploring your ecological self. So, as always with these sessions, we have people who are calling in from around the world and around this continent here of Australia. Please, if you can now, open up your chat. Let us know where you're calling in from. And if you know the unceded lands on which you're seated, please drop that in too. So, another thing just to keep in mind is if you wouldn't mind muting yourself, while we're not in our conversation sessions, we will have lots of interactive parts, but while you're not speaking, if you could keep mute with as many people that we have here today, it might get a little bit echoey. The other thing that I want to just, as a little bit of housekeeping too, in the reminder that I sent out, I invited you to bring, well, actually, John Seed invited you to bring a plant for something he's doing. So if you haven't got your plant in front of you, beside you, behind you, or in line of sight, if you'd like to go and grab that now, that would be fantastic. That will help later on in the session. But before we begin our session, I would like to just let you know a little bit about what's going on today. So this session is one of our monthly permaculture related masterclasses. This is the 52nd Monday night masterclass that we've been offering. So every last Monday of every month, we host one of these sessions. And these are hosted by the Permaculture Education Institute, which I founded many years ago. And our goal really here is to support people who are interested in permaculture or becoming permaculture educators to gather the skills and the information and the connections to this broad ecological movement that exists. And so today I'm so excited to be able to bring this session to you. Also, before I introduce our special guest for today, I wanted to send out a thank you to those of you who are here in the background helping as well, because it's without you, these things just don't happen. So I just wanted to point to Stacey English, who's here letting you all in and keeping track of everything and dropping in links when necessary. And Maya Raymond, my daughter, who is going to be helping with all the breakout rooms and other organizational things behind the scenes. And also to John Pitlow, who helped me set up this whole. So thank you to the fabulous Permaculture Education Institute team. I also wanted to acknowledge that this has been one of the most signed up sessions for a very long time. And I'm so excited by that. We have well over 650 people registered for this event. Normally, a number of people can't make it for time and whatever, but we will be sending out the recording to both them and to you here as well. So if you'd like to watch it again or share it with someone else that you know, feel free to do that. And I also too wanted to thank you for donating if you were able when you signed up for this. We have received $1,200 that has been donated to go directly. We send 100% to refugee communities who many of our friends are probably here in the group as well. So thank you so much. If you would like to continue and donate as well, if you didn't get the chance, I know Stacey will drop in the chat as well, where you can find the Ethos Foundation and the work that we do. It's a sister organization. So we run both of them, both the Permaculture Education Institute and the Ethos Foundation. So let's get into our deep ecology session. I wanted to let you know, first of all, that I am in awe of the people that are here with me today. These are some of the world leaders in deep ecology. And Stefan Harding, who I'm about to introduce, I think would have to be one of the people who inspired me on this journey. As a young 23-year-old, I landed at this place called Schumacher College in Devon in the UK back in 1992. And there I met Stefan, who with his Quattro was talking all things deep ecology and systems thinking, and took us out on walks out through the forest and transformed my way of thinking into an ecological way of thinking. So thank you, Stefan. How that landed in me has basically created the foundation for everything that I've done in my life. So thank you. So in essence, deep ecology, and Stefan's going to explain it much better, but essentially deep ecology is an eco-philosophy that calls for an ecocentric way of life to address the global problems that humanity is facing. And it began in the 70s, and yet more so ever than now, it's something that we really need to pay attention to. And the interest in this session today has demonstrated that. I guess you agree with me as well. So here to share this session with me, the Deep Ecology, Permaculture and Exploring Your Ecological Self session, let me just introduce first. So I think you're going to start getting spotlighted. So maybe Stefan first. So Stefan is one of the founding scholars at Schumacher College, and is currently a research fellow in deep ecology at Schumacher College too, and has had the opportunity to work closely for decades with people like Arne Naess, Fritjof Capra, Vandana Shiva, James Lovelock, Lynn Margulis, and many, many others. So welcome today, Stefan. Stefan is also, with James Lovelock, appointed to the Arne Naess Chair in Global Justice and Environment at the University of Oslo, which Arne Naess is the founder of Deep Ecology. Stefan is also an author of a number of books. We'll send you the links to those, and a film, which we have screened before at our film club. And now I'll bring in Pat Meyer, if you wouldn't mind dropping Pat into our screen here. Pat Fleming is the co-author of a deep ecology book called Thinking Like a Mountain, which I remember seeing as soon as it was released and entirely inspired by that. So thank you, Pat. And it's an absolute delight. Pat and I have only just met since planning for this session, so I'm really delighted we've had this opportunity. So Thinking Like a Mountain is a book that she co-wrote with Arne Naess, the founder of Deep Ecology, Joanna Macy, who brought into the world the work that reconnects, and John Seed, who is our next guest here. But before we bring John in, John, there you are, that's all right. I just wanted to also add that Pat has also spent a long time in Dartmoor, not far from where Stefan is, and has worked at the college too, mentoring participants in a program called Call of the Wild since 2009, which is a deep immersion training for outdoor environmental educators towards developing experiences of nature in the wild. And she also shared with them Council of All Beings, which is a process that John will be sharing with us as well. And I know just in talking to Pat before, her main focus of exploring deep ecology these days is through poetry and art, and I'm sure we'll have a chance to speak more about that. And John, welcome, John Seed. John Seed is also another one of those iconic legends in that I have looked to for decades, since I can remember, as someone who has inspired positive action for the world. So John is the founder of the Rainforest Information Centre, and also currently, like me, a resident of an ecovillage in Australia, just a few hundred kilometres south of me. And he's dedicated his life to the protection of forests and biodiversity since 1979. He's been awarded the Order of Australia Medal and has written and lectured extensively on deep ecology. Like I said, he's the co-author of Thinking Like a Mountain, and he conducts re-earthing workshops around the world and has done so for a quarter of a century, including the Council of All Beings in places like Esalen, Amiga, Naropa Institute, California Institute of Integral Studies. And also Stefan was on the Film Club, and John was on the my recent podcast as well, called Sense Making in a Changing World. Gosh, that was probably one of the longest introductions I've ever done, because we have such an amazing panel of people. I wanted you to know who's here in the room with us today. You will have a chance to, we're going to hear from each of, well, after a little bit of a grounding activity that Pat's going to lead, we will hear from each of these wonderful people here in the room with us. and then have a chance to be in conversation. So firstly, with the panelists amongst themselves, but then also to invite you to ask questions. So please feel free to drop in the, you can use the reactions below like this to raise your hand, and that will bring you up where I can see you, and Maya can drop you in and you can be part of this discussion group if you like, or if you don't feel like you want to be spotlighted like that, feel free just to drop some questions in the chat and we'll find you as well. Those of you just arriving, yes, please keep your introductions coming. That's wonderful. But right now, I'd like to hand over to Pat to ground us into this space today. Thank you, Pat, and welcome.
Oh, thank you, Morag. And I'm watching the wonderful list of people who are here now with us all from all over the world. Well, greetings to you. I'm in Lutruwita, which is Tasmania. I've just moved here, and this is Palawa country. So greetings from the bottom end of the planet. What we wanted to do to just start was to connect people, because all of deep ecology and the work that reconnects is about people finding each other, sharing and seeing what happens, seeing what's there. So we wanted to ground you in the practice of gratitude, and of really just starting from gratitude, and we'll finish with gratitude for our lives, for being alive and for being present to each other. So we're going to ask you to go into pairs in the breakout rooms. And in the breakout rooms, there will be a prompt, and you'll have 5 minutes there just with one other person. And just before you actually start the exercise, a very simple exercise of sharing gratitude, tell the person your name and tell them where you are in the world right now. So if we could go to the start to go to the breakout rooms, please.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope that was a lovely way to land and just to meet somebody who's here and to share the beginning of what is the work that reconnects cycle that Pat will talk about a little bit later. But I wanted to throw across to you, Stefan, because I think a really good place to begin this conversation together is, well, what actually is deep ecology and where did it come from?
Okay, thanks. Yeah. Well, the person, as Morag said, the person who coined the term deep ecology was Norwegian philosopher, academic philosopher called Arne Naess, who was an extraordinary character, a mountaineer, very playful, very brilliant. Anyway, he pointed out, he was a friend of mine, and he taught at Schumacher College many times. So he pointed out that the word ecology just comes from science. So I'm an ecologist. That's what I did my doctorate in. And as an ecologist, all you're interested in is data, facts about nature. Imagine in England here we have blackbirds. So if I'm studying the blackbirds, I want to know just facts about them. How many are there per square kilometer? What are their foods? When is their mating season? How many eggs does the average female lay, etc., 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 etc. This great list of facts, And Arne pointed out that's all very important. It's very important to know about nature in that way. But the problem is that ecology as a science doesn't tell us how we should live in relation to those facts. Should I eat the blackbirds? Should I not eat the blackbirds? Should I collect their eggs? Should I collect their feathers for my hat? What's my relationship with the blackbird? And indeed with the whole of nature? Well, science doesn't tell us about that. It just gives us loads of facts. So he said, in order to answer that question, which is a value question, not a question of fact, we need something deeper. We need to go deeper within ourselves. And that's why he put the word deep in front of the word ecology. And that gave us deep ecology. So deep ecology is about asking how we should be living with our planet in this time of crisis, using the scientific knowledge that we have, but going deeper than science. And for me, when having thought about this a lot, I realized that for me, there are three aspects of the word deep. So 3 deeps. Although my friend Per Ingvar Haukeland in Norway, who's worked a lot with Arne, he has about 5 deeps. Anyway, I kick this off by saying there are different deeps. So the first deep for me is deep experience. And that is profound, deep experience of connection with nature or with Gaia. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. The second deep for me is deep questioning. So Arne always pointed out that once we've had a deep experience of connection with nature, I'm sure we all have on this call, that's not enough. We need to ask ourselves, how do I live my life in relation to my deep experiences? That's the second deep questioning. We can also do deep questioning together as a community, which we'll probably do a bit of later on. And the third deep for me is deep commitment. So Arne also pointed out, it's not enough to have deep experience, and it's not enough to have deep questioning, because they can stay on a very abstract level or a very personal level. We need to take action peacefully and democratically to take care of our world and to reform our economic system, et cetera, et cetera. And that requires a deep commitment to do something in the world peacefully, democratically, for Gaia, for humanity, but always in a way that's consistent with our deep experience and with our deep questioning. And I think the three of them are linked together in a circle through feedback. So the deeper your experience, the deeper your questioning, the deeper your questioning, the deeper your commitment to doing something in the world. And that deepens your experience. So it's a kind of self-reinforcing feedback loop. And in the middle of that, we could say, we have, as we develop these three deeps in ourselves, we have what Arne called an ecosophy. So notice that's different to ecology. Ecology means oikos, home, logos, rational study. That's the scientific aspect of ecology. Ecosophy has the same first word, oikos, which means home. But instead of logos, which is rational study, we have sophia, which is wisdom. So as we go around those three deeps in our lives and deepen them, what we're doing is cultivating our own personal, individual, ecological wisdom, which Arne called ecosophy. And that's a very important point, that it's individual. Deep ecology, Arne pointed out very much, it shouldn't become another religion or another dogma with a set of rules that everyone has to obey, otherwise they get kicked out of the Deep Ecology Club. It's not like that at all. It really isn't. It's more like in Jungian psychology, in which Jung talked about individuation, becoming really yourself, your own ecosophy, your own unique personal ecosophy, which you develop through suffering, experience, etc., etc. That's very important. So I've got a little bit more time, have I, Morag? Just to elaborate?
Yeah, talk, a little bit more. Thank you.
Deep experience. Okay, I'll just say a little bit about the three deeps, okay? Deep experience, or one of the deep experience I'll never forget, in fact, I had it several times, was going up to Arne's cabin in Norway, up in the mountains, in this beautiful flat-top mountain called Hallingskarvet in southern Norway, in a real wilderness. And I wish I could take you with me there. You put on our rucksacks. We've got to go up there for a whole week. There's no food up there. There's no running water, there's no toilets. You have to go to the toilet in the rocks. And we walk up for about 3.5 hours, 4 hours through this beautiful wild country. I wish I could show you pictures of it, with this beautiful mountain, even with snow, even in the summer, there's little patches of snow. And we walk up through this wild, wild open country, and we get to his cabin. The mountain itself is flat topped, and then we look out from there to this vast landscape in Norway of, it seems to be totally undisturbed, of lakes and lakes and mountains and lakes and mountains and lakes and patches of snow. And we just live in deep experience there the whole time. And I've been there twice, or maybe more actually, maybe 3 or 4 times. And every time it's just living deep experience. But you don't have to have a big landscape like that. You can have a deep experience watering your plant in your house, It can be on a very small scale. Or the other day, I saw some ants interacting with each other on the ground, and that became a deep experience. So deep questioning. Well, just last thing, to cultivate deep experience, is good to do a practice like meditation or mindfulness, just to open your mind and clear away the clutter. It's like a sort of sacred experience of nature, basically. Then deep questioning, well, you ask yourselves, as I said, how do I live my life in relation to these deep experiences? And then we can ask, what do people who've had deep experiences have in common? And one of the most important things people have in common who've had these deep experiences is this: all life has intrinsic value, irrespective of its usefulness to humans. In fact, there are 8 points that Arne Naess and George Sessions, another philosopher, came up with, which they call the deep ecology platform, which are discussed, through deep questioning. But that's the most important one. And the last one of those 8 points is, if you have this experience, you have an obligation to be involved in bringing about the necessary changes in society, peacefully and democratically. So that's roughly deep experience. And deep commitment, well, I mean, look, Morag and John Seed and Pat, exemplars of deep commitment. Myself, worked for 33 years at Schumacher College, it hasn't always been easy. So, you really give your life to this wonderful deep experience or set of deep experiences that you felt, and you work for Gaia, and that includes humanity. One last thing, people have criticized deep ecology by saying it's anti-human, and that's complete nonsense. So I want you to know that if you come across these criticisms of deep ecology, you must realize they're wrong, because if you like, the kernel of deep ecology is this insight that all life, including humans, of course, has intrinsic value, irrespective of its usefulness to humans. Last word, this word life I find problematic, because we tend to think of that as just being biological life. For me, everything is alive. Mountains, stones, rivers, rocks, clouds, atmosphere, all the so-called non-living aspects of life, as we say in science, the abiotic dimension. Nonsense, it's all alive. Every single atom, every molecule is full of life. So when I think of all life as intrinsic value, I think of all the atoms, molecules, rocks, planets, cosmoses, etc. Okay, I hope I've given you a very quick thumbnail sketch of what.
Thank you. That was absolutely beautiful, Stefan. And you answered that question so beautifully about what is deep ecology, where does it come from, and why is it so important that we be paying attention to deep ecology today. And I love the way that you talked about working for Gaia. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of it, really, isn't it? And I think that the aliveness of the whole planet as a system. And so, you didn't get a chance to really talk much about your work with James Lovelock, but maybe just as a final connecting thread before we hand over to Pat, like, where is that connected thread for you with deep ecology and Gaia theory?
Well, as I was mentioning, Gaia theory is straight science, although Lovelock was more than a straight science, but he was a genius as a scientist. So Gaia theory tells us about all the feedback loops that tend to regulate the climate, let's say, right? But again, it doesn't tell us how we should live, what's our relationship with all that. And that's where I started bridging the gap between deep ecology and Gaia. So our focus is very much on connecting with the planet. Just to finish, I think one of the deep experiences for me is what I call being Gaia'd. Mm-hmm. And those moments when I might be sitting in my woodland here or watering a plant, and all of a sudden I realize that I'm living inside a great planetary organism called Gaia, the ancient Greek divinity of the living earth, Gaia, very mythological. And you get this sense that we humans, as my friend David Abram would say, have two bodies. One is this little body, and which lives inside our larger body, which is the planet. Just like microbes live inside our guts, so do we live inside our planet. So it's as if we're endosymbionts within our planet. Endosymbiosis was coined investigated by Lynn Margulis, who also worked a great deal on Gaia. So I think the link really is, to cut it short, between deep ecology and Gaia theory is to be Gaia'd as a deep experience. Mm-hmm. And to do that, just really, it helps to read some of the science, so your imagination can flow into some of the feedback loops that Lovelock discovered.
Thank you so much, Stefan. And I love that about being Gaia'd. And you can be Gaia'd anywhere, wherever you are, any day, any time. And I think that's a beautiful way to go into the world. I like too how you talk about you don't go outside, you go inside. Go into nature. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing that perspective, and to that, the idea of, you know, how are we to live, I think is that question that I left Schumacher College with when I was 23, after traveling up with you and Julia up through the Himalayas and experiencing Ladakh and experiencing all the ideas. How are we to live? And that's where I landed with permaculture, which is one of the threads of the conversation today as well. I hope we can weave that in somewhere. But I think whether we point at it or not, that you will see the interconnectedness of how a permaculture way of thinking connects with a deep ecology framework. Thank you, Stefan, so much. Please stay around for questions if you can, and for the discussion. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Pat, I'd like to hand over to you now, because you were going to spend a little bit of time helping us to introduce the concept of the work that reconnects. Would you like me to share the screen now with that picture? Would that help?
Yeah, why not now, and then I'll talk beyond it, and you can maybe.
Okay. All right, let me just do
that. Thank you. So this image that's coming up has been drawn by one of the participants in the work that reconnects, for Arne Naess, who's the kind of root teacher of the work that reconnects. And we're going to use this as a little map, if you like, for our session today as well. So we started with gratitude. We've heard a little bit of the deeper context and the deep ecology of the where we're living and how we're living from Stefan. And I wanted to introduce us through this spiral of starting from gratitude, if you like, as our root, being rooted in gratitude. But at the same time, we live in this world, many worlds as we experience them individually, but we live in a world, all of us witnessing the destruction of our life support systems and seeing things fragment or break up, whether it's on a very close personal level or whether it's going into the larger global level. And that's just the world we live in. And I find I talk to lots of people, just ordinary people, and everybody that I talk to pretty much is aware that things are breaking down. And we look in this process of being able not to just get stuck in that, or to get trapped or numbed, or to get into addictive behavior to try and get away from it, but to actually be with our pain, be with each other, listen to each other, hear each other. And in the way that Stefan was talking about the feedback loops, when we deeply listen, when we are present to each other, things emerge, things have the room to change. So within the honoring of our pain, there is the space to break through, to break down, to let things change within us and between us, and things that we can then start to build from. So the third part of the process is the seeing with new eyes, where there's a chance to go through the experiences that we use group work, whether it's just a small group or a large group. It may be just half a day or even a couple of hours, going through to a 30-day retreat of processing, where there's room for all sorts of new ways of being, new ways of experiencing, new ways of understanding how we live within this fragmenting planet, within the self-destruction that has happened to our life support system so fast. And the seeing with new eyes gives us a chance to have different ways of taking action, different ways of expressing ourselves. We'll talk about the Council of All Beings as being a ritual that helps people take on a different perspective, not such a personal perspective, but perhaps from the perspective of other species, of other peoples, or of land and country systems themselves. The book Thinking Like a Mountain was an exploration, or is an exploration, of being able to see with new eyes and experience beyond our own individual skin encapsulated ego, as Arne Naess talked about. And then out of that seeing with new eyes, there's the opportunity, especially working with each other, especially supporting each other. It's very hard to do it on your own, of finding something meaningful, something that speaks through you or speaks to you, that calls your name, that wants you to partner in terms of going forth and taking some form of action, some form of creativity, some form of expression in the world, and sharing this and finding other people maybe who share this. And then in this spiral keeps repeating. It's a case of perhaps even in a day you can go through the different parts of the spiral and returning to gratitude for being alive. A chance to feel and experience in the depth of your bones, your cells, the gift of life that you inhabit, the life that has got your name on it, and that one day will stop and will be going back to the great unknown. So Arne Naess is a Buddhist scholar. She's spent many years deeply committed to her practice. She is the root teacher of this work, and she has written a number of books. I have put a few links in to follow up afterwards, but of course, if you just put the word Arne Naess in, you'll go straight to her website. So you can go straight to the woman if you like. She's 94. She's been doing this work, or she was in India when she first came across the Buddha Dharma and started to study with Tibetan teachers there. And that gave her, if you like, her spiritual backbone. And she is a woman who's got an immense depth and wealth of her spiritual practice through Buddhism. And the work that reconnects really has that as its bedrock all the way through. She started this work really, the work that reconnects, in its original form, it was called Despair and Empowerment Work. And I was there fairly early on in that work, evolving. And a number of people, Joanna talks about a wealth of people who've contributed to this work over 40 years plus. And the Despair and Empowerment, her first book, or one of her first books, is called Despair and Empowerment in the Nuclear Age. And that's when this work, if you like, came into its strength, because we were facing, I was, as a 20-year-old, nuclear annihilation, the knowledge about nuclear weapons and of the nuclear industry. And it's a place that can feel like a prison, or a place where to be able to find a way through. I came across her work, and her work was called Despair Work in those days. This work enables you to not run away into being psychically numb, psychologically cut off, addicted to repetitive behavior of whatever kind that just enables you to keep breathing, but not a lot more. And it starts to ask you to share in the workshops, in the process. So that the spiral that I described is the workshop process that Joanna encourages us to consider as our commitment of a kind of personal journey, but it's much greater, because the person you start to realize you're not just the individual. As Stefan was talking about, we are just cells of a larger body. And if you like, that larger body goes beyond Gaia. It's into the self-organizing universe that we are still finding out about. I've had some wonderful conversations with John about who are we? What are we? And John has written some wonderful stuff that's in Thinking Like a Mountain, that's the universe story. And that remembering that deep time comes into this work, so that we start to realize that we are deeper than just our individual selves. We are our ancestors. We are the future beings that come through us. We are dancing subatomic particles of this universe becoming conscious. There's so much that can go within and weave itself through this work. So when you have a chance to go into the pain and express, whether it's, for me, it was deep fear and deep anger, and then a capacity to not see a future, and the chance to work with a group of other people, hearing each other, sharing our pain, sharing our unexpected joy that comes out as the flip side. Joanna talks about the tantric flip of emotions, where if you let yourself drop more deeply into a powerful feeling, you can suddenly find that it shifts into something that might even seem its opposite. And that an awful lot of energy can be released, and a lot of joy, a lot of creativity, a lot of kind of laughing or dancing, shrieking, running around. It's like being, you know, if you have little kids in a place where they can let rip. But as adults, we've forgotten how to let rip. So in the spiral of coming from gratitude, going into honoring our pain, and just asking the question, what's here? And then we can go on in that process of what else is here, with seeing with new eyes, to a new experience of a way of being in the world, a new sense of yourself, and of possibilities that you had been completely closed to, which you can't see from the other side. This is only such a short time to try and explain or to give an idea of something that is a big process and continues to evolve. It continues to evolve. So the essential part from the seeing with new eyes is then the going forth. What do you do with this? Where do you take this? And I love the part in going forth when we just really look at, well, there are 8 billion of us. We can't all do the same thing. So what is it that you individually, what is it that is alive in you, that wants to come through you like the blood through your veins, or the voice that sings? What is that? And just to experience or ask that question, and to see what comes, and just see what keeps coming. And for me, the essential part then of the going forth is, okay, maybe it is poetry, but what's the intention? What's the vehicle? What's the shape and form that might come through in me? And to work in groups. I love it when people buddy up. So at the end of going forth, we often say, what's your next step? And who's the person you're going to talk to in the next 24 hours about your next step? And I will really encourage people to keep buddying up. Make a team. If you have an intention, if you have a fantastic idea for something, find just a little core or a big core of group. I mean, John, you know, you've got your 5,000 followers on Facebook. You know, they are your core team that keep you going, you know. And then within that process of wherever going forth takes you, or wherever you, or a smaller thing, it might be some healing work in your family that's desperate to be done to enable you to be stronger in the world. Come back to gratitude. And that, if you like, is the way that then the spiral keeps evolving. I've put some links on for books and websites and things. The last thing I'll say about Joanna is that she will tell some wonderful stories, and that's the best way, rather than ever trying to work with people telling them how they should be. Tell a story. And in her writings, she's gone from despair work through the work that reconnects, and then active hope. And the book of Active Hope, written with Chris Johnson, is a manual for you to go anywhere in the world with a small group of people or a larger group of people and go through these processes. And then the last book that's come out about Joanna's life is Wild Love for the Earth. And I think that perhaps is what all of us are living, a wild love for the earth.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Pat. When both you and Stefan were speaking, and I'm sure many people in this room here, there's kind of a tingle thing happening when you feel that deep connection, and you take yourself in your mind to places where you have that deep connection, and you can find a place where you can be guided, but you carry that being guided with you every single moment of every single day. And when we connect in this way and hear these thoughts and ideas, it reminds us of that, of where we are. I wanted to bring in a thread because there was something about what you said about in our veins. Last night, I was at an event helping to release a new film that's here in Australia called Rachel's Farm, about her journey from her despair around what's happening with the climate to saying, okay, well, I'm going to make my commitment to do regenerative farming. And in part of that, she started to have a conversation with one of the local elders. And he said this one thing as they're walking through the forest, and she was learning how to notice things in that landscape and learning the language of the country. He said, we're all like veins connected to the earth. And that was just this beautiful image. And everyone just kind of gasped at that moment. The whole cinema was full, and you could hear this shift that happened in the room when we sensed it in that way. And I thought, what I do find a lot is the lack of language to explain how I feel in moments like this, or to the lack of language I feel when I'm being guided, and how to communicate that with other people. I'm searching for this word. I might see if I can articulate my question to you all and ask you later, because I'd like to hand over to John in a moment. But there's this feeling that I have. It needs some word or a description. Maybe it's in another language, and in English it just doesn't exist. I don't know.
I would say that's where the poets and the artists and the dancers, because the language may not be precise or alive enough.
No, thank you.
And it is an inquiry and an expression.
It is an inquiry, that's right. It is about that question, the deep questioning, Stefan, that you were saying, and those deep questioning, the deep inquiry that we have. Maybe there isn't maybe I'm barking up the wrong tree. There's no word at all. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Pat. Please, I want to encourage everyone who's here in this session to drop in any questions that you have. We will be looking for those, or just reflections. Something that I find really beautiful when we're in these sessions is to use the chat as a place where you can be doing this collective note-taking, because it lands with us all differently. We may all have different resources that we've found, or different questions that we want to ask. And if we share that, we will be sharing the chat at the end, so that collective response will be there. So please go ahead and audaciously use the chat function of Zoom. Thank you, Pat. I'd like to pass to John now. And John and I recently were in conversation on, as I mentioned, on Sense Making a Changing World, a podcast that I host. But he also was here in the Ecovillage where I am recently, and hosting a series, he's hosting a Council of All Beings in this permaculture village with one of the key permaculture teachers who lives here in this village as well. And currently, John is taking Council of All Beings up and down the east coast of Australia. He said he's never before, in all of the time he's been running them, experienced such an amplification of interest in this work. It's just starting to blossom. So I wonder, John, whether you might be able to talk us through a little bit about your perspectives on what deep ecology means to you, and also how you bring it into the world through Council of All Beings and other re-earthing activities, and also how for you feel that permaculture fits with this conversation. Welcome, John.
Well, thanks so much, Morag. I'm so grateful for you bringing me together with two old friends and colleagues. We go back decades with each other, Stefan and Pat and I. So I came to deep ecology via the movement to protect rainforests, especially in Australia. In 1979, I was part of the direct actions at Terania Creek in northern New South Wales that eventually led to the protection of the best of New South Wales' rainforests. And from there, went down to Tasmania the following year for the campaign to stop the damming of the Franklin River and the flooding of the temperate rainforest wilderness. More than 3,000 people came to that protest. More than 1,500 people were arrested. It's hard to imagine today. And then the year after that was up at the Daintree Cape Tribulation for the tropical rainforest. And in each case, national parks and eventually World Heritage listing rewarded our efforts. But at the same time, I'd started the Rainforest Information Centre. I was finding out what was happening around the world. And I'd learned that the rainforests are the very womb of life. They're home to more than half of the species of plants and animals in the world. And the satellite photographs were showing them disappearing at a horrendous rate, so that less than a single human lifetime remained. And I realised in the mid-80s that in spite of the successes we were having in Australia, worldwide, for every forest that had been protected in the past 5 or 10 years, 1,000 forests had been lost. And clearly, there was no way to save the planet one forest at a time. That unless we could address the underlying spiritual disease that allows modern humans to imagine that we can profit from the destruction of our own life support systems, clearly these actions would be of little use as far as the future of the world was concerned. And it was in inquiring into the nature of this psychological or spiritual disease that I came upon deep ecology, and was greatly relieved because for the first time I felt my questions were being answered. So Arne Naess said that underlying all of the symptoms of our environmental crisis is the illusion of separation between humanity and the rest of the natural world, and that this illusion of separation was itself a result of anthropocentrism or human-centeredness, the idea that human beings are the center of everything. We are the crown of creation. We are the measure of all being. And the world consists of human beings on the one hand and resources for human beings on the other hand, the most unecological attitude. But he said, we've been thinking this way for thousands and thousands of years. It goes back at least as far as the Old Testament, where we learn that humans are to subdue and dominate nature, and nature is to be in fear and trembling of us. And for this reason, he said that we're not going to be able to think our way out of the mess that's been created. He said famously that ecological ideas won't be enough to save us. What we need is ecological identity, ecological self. And he said that in order to nourish that ecological identity, he called for community therapies to dispel that illusion of separation and to connect us with our true nature as part of this living planet. So I was very taken with this philosophy and took to it like another campaign. I was just spreading, the word about it as far as I could, but it was really a couple of years later in 1986 when I met Joanna Macy when she came to Australia with her despair and empowerment work that Pat described, that the next piece fell into place, because I was as moved by the incredible power of the personal transformation that she could bring about through the despair work as she was by the philosophy of deep ecology. And we brought those things together, and a week after the workshop of hers that I attended, we were walking through Terania Creek and we created the Council of All Beings. And the week after that, we facilitated the first Council of All Beings, and both of us have been working with these two things together ever since. So the way that permaculture fits into this for me is that working for the rainforests, it became clear that wherever rainforests were being destroyed, one of the engines of that destruction was unsustainable agriculture. And so permaculture became a really important part of what we would take with us as volunteers from our organisation, went all over the world. And back in the early 80s, I started working with an early permaculture teacher in Australia, Lee Harrison, and she would invite me to do a day of deep ecology at each of her permaculture design certificate courses. And in exchange, she would allow me to bring 1 or 2 volunteers from the Rainforest Information Centre to study permaculture. And they then took that to Ecuador, to India, to many different parts of the world, and included permaculture teaching in the work that they did there.
Sorry, I was so engrossed in your story, John. I was busy listening. the story of where this began, I think, is such a powerful one. And what I am hearing as I'm listening to all of you, that where this emerged from with nuclear, with seeing the devastation of what's happening up, but there was a time when this emerged, and it feels like right now we are in a moment of time when we are again facing the nuclear threat. That to me, Pat, was something that terrified me as a teenager, and I think opened my mind to the deep questioning about what is humanity doing. And at the same time too, John, I was probably watching your work of what was going on down the Franklin. I grew up in Victoria, and we were, the loss of forests, and at the same time too, I remember this. I can still taste it in my mouth and my tongue. When I was in year 9, I was in typing class. They used to do typing class. I don't know if you remember typing class. Anyway, I was sitting in typing class. I was thinking, why am I doing this? I'll never be a typist. I will never type in my life. Here I am. I type every day. But anyway, I was sitting there, and then the place went dark, absolutely dark. And there was people were terrified. No one had any mobile phones, nothing. So we're all just sat there, and they said, get under your desks. No one knew. We didn't know whether it was a fire, whatever. And it ended up being that all of the soil from all of the farms across the western plains of Victoria and beyond came up in a great big dust cloud and landed on Melbourne, in the city of Melbourne, and everything changed. And I think at that moment, something switched in me. There's those moments of ecological destruction when we come face to face with them. It could be a tree in your backyard. It could be something like that. It could be about noticing the loss. And I think that's what Pat was talking about as well. There's something within us that we feel and we notice that empowers us to take this step and to explore how we to live. And I wonder whether Maya might be able to bring Pat and Stefan back into the spotlight, because I wanted to ask you more about this idea of transformation, this idea of the ecological self. And in this moment, in this time, with the urgency of the situation, I know Baya Kamalafe talks about, slowing down in the face of what we're experiencing. But how is it that you feel that we can face the current nuclear threats and the continued, fossil fuel digging up, the continued forest loss, with embracing our ecological self? I know you've all touched on a bit, but perhaps I just felt like that word transformation that you talked about somewhere in there, John, I believe. I think that's a really important point. Like, where's that? Is there a pivot point? How do we, it's a very personal thing, but how can we maybe create the context in which that becomes more visible for that transformation to take place, or more possible for that transformation to take place?
Maybe I'll start off on that, Morag, if that's okay. And what I find is that in facilitating these workshops, I'm also a participant. And so once I have set the stage for the process that we use for honouring our pain for the world, I just become part of that circle. And in that circle, the participants express their fear and rage and anguish about what's happening to our world. And what we find is that whenever a group of people get together and honestly bare their souls to each other and express their deepest feelings that are normally unacceptable, that are normally shunned, that people will change the subject, people will tell you to lighten up, or get a grip, that when that is welcomed, when that is invited, then a tremendous surge of empowerment rushes forth afterwards. And we find that invariably people lift up into a tremendous sense of enthusiasm and excitement. So these feelings aren't there to destroy us. They're not there. They're there as part of our intelligence, that for 99.999999% of the last 4,000 million years, our ancestors were intelligent enough in every generation to reach the age of reproducing before they were consumed. And it's only the last instant of that thinking has been part of that intelligence. So that ancient intelligence that led us to the present time, what we call feelings is what remains in us of that intelligence. And so when we deny those feelings, we just make it very, very difficult for us to move, because when we say I was moved to do something, when I was moved to respond, we're not talking about our thoughts, we're talking about our feelings. And so as we become friends with our feelings, in a way, it allows us to feel deeply the anguish and the grief and the rage at times of our choosing. And we find that the rest of the time, those feelings just leave us alone, because it's clear that we've heard our instructions and we've been moved and we know what to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'd add to that, John, also that having done many transformations as other beings in the Council of All Beings, and we haven't spoken a lot about that, but there's the chance to take on any other life form on the planet or even the cosmos. And there's certainly one time when I was at a big environmental conference in London, I was just feeling a bit small and a bit nothing, you know, hearing all this stuff that was going on. But the president of the World Bank happened to be there. And I had been writing him letters about stuff going on in India. And I said to my friend, I really want to talk to that man. And he said, get on with it. And what I did at that point, rather than me, Pat Fleming, I remembered leaning against a very large tree in the rainforest at Mount Warning and feeling her, it was a her, and her ancient strength. And I just asked for her to be with me. And I went and spoke to him for a few minutes. And that to me was like a direct kind of calling on the eco self to break through the individual small nature of identity.
Yeah. Yeah. Stefan, would you like to jump in and?
Yeah. So I have two things I can offer. One is a more individual thing, and another is a more communal, collective thing. The individual thing is, I recommend we all find our own Gaia place. So, for example, I've got my Gaia tree in our garden, and I go there every day if I can. And like Pat was saying, you know, I just put my back against the tree, or I like to hold on to some branches and look up into the beautiful leafy canopy and just feel the miracle of the tree. And I think of the tree as the tree of life. So the roots are deep experience, the trunk is, you know, our deep questioning, and the branches are deep commitment. So find somewhere in your garden, even indoors with a plant, you know, even I've got a winter Gaia place here with some plants because it's freezing cold and miserable in the English winter quite often. So I just sit there with my indoor plants. So that's one thing, Gaia place. The other thing, a more collective thing I would recommend is to do a deep time walk. So something we developed here at Schumacher College, a deep time walk. And we have an app. If you Google deep time walk, you'll be able to download an app for your smartphone. And the idea is that you walk 4.6 kilometers, you choose the route, and those 4.6 kilometers represent 4,600 million years of Earth's history. That's how old Gaia is. And as you walk, the app tells you what was happening during the evolution of our planet. And the best thing to do is to do that with a group of people. You can lead a deep time walk. I know there are folks in Australia that can lead them. You can train yourself very easily how to lead them, and then gather a group with you and do a deep time walk. Imagine if you combine that with Council of All Beings, you know, be rather a great combination. Just to finish about the deep time walk, on that scale, you ready for this? This is really mind-blowing. On that scale, 4.6 kilometers equals 4,600 million years, which is the age of the Earth. Every millimeter that we walk, you know, which is sort of like that, is 1,000 years. Every meter that we walk, every 2 footsteps is 1,000,000 years. So every footstep is about 500,000 years. I often do that in my garden, you know, I remember this. And I walk in my garden, a footstep, 500,000 years. Gaia's story. And then I stop for about a few minutes and just contemplate the fact that every footstep is 500,000 years. So, but it's lovely to do that with a group of people, the deep time walk. You can do that with a group of people. If you were to come to Schumacher College, you could do it with me. We could go together through the Dartington estate and do a deep time walk. But look into deep time walk. It's a great complement to Council of All Beings, I think.
I've dropped that into the chat for people to have a look at and follow more. I think it's a wonderful concept, and I've offered it to young teenagers who come here on the permaculture camps in the ecovillage. I take them along the river and we mark certain points along the river and just sit in the river and have conversations at different times. And we get to the end and exploring, when we get really close into those last little bits of humanity and industrial society and where we are right now, it's a great point to have those deeper conversations. And I think if we can have them together, there's been a lot of conversations too about, this idea of despair, of feeling overwhelmed, of feeling like we don't really know how we can move forward. And I think these things that you've been saying here, this part of our own transformation, gives us that strength to speak up. And sometimes what I feel too, and it's exactly like what you were mentioning, Pat, is that it gives us strength, because it's not just like little old me speaking out. I remember the book, The Lorax, it's like, I speak for the trees, and, I speak for Gaia. I am this earth as the earth is me. And we who speak up are speaking on behalf of the planet and all species. And it behooves us to take that as a deep responsibility of speaking for all species, which I think is something why it's really beautiful, the opportunity you have for the Council of All Beings to be able to really land into that. And I wonder whether one of you, John or Pat, might be able to describe the Council of All Beings a bit, just in a couple of minutes, just to give people a sense of what it is, what it's about, and what they'll experience in that.
John and I have both worked together and worked with an awful lot of other people in it. So I'll just say a couple of words and I'd invite John to join me. The way that I love to do the Council of All Beings is to be somewhere where we are relatively undisturbed, in a little wild place if we can. But we've done it, I've done it in, indoor rooms in London and stuff like that. But there's a process of inviting another being to come and join you. And it can be something that attracts you or something that just drops in. And I love to spend a bit of time getting to know that being through movement or through, I take people, when I'm leading people, I take people through one Earth day-night cycle. So you sleep as your being, whatever that might be, and then you start to wake up and take you through, where are you, who's with you, how do you experience the world? So becoming the being rather than just instantly knowing what to do. So exploring the being through movement, through sound, through interaction with people. Sometimes we'll even take a drum and we'll just go out and be in a piece of wood or stream or whatever as your being. And just, if you're a rock, you just lie in a corner and you just, whatever. So the chance to experience in your imagination, in your creative imagination, whatever that might be, and to find your voice and to be gifted with the magic of human language, and to sit in pairs and speak as your being. And the other person asks you about who you are, what's going on in your life, what matters to you, what are you upset about, or what are you angry about, or where's your community, where's your strength? And then we go and take that and do some silent being with our being, if we can, and then make a mask. And the mask is, this goes back to my days of psychodrama, where when you take on another role and you inhabit it, you invite a much wider identity than your personality. And a mask enables you to just have a symbol for that, but also to perhaps cover your humanness, and to have something else that you express yourself through. And there can be a bit of alchemy that goes on with that. John, do you want to speak more about the process of the council itself?
Oh no, I think you've pretty covered it, Pat. But what's coming to me is that, to me, deep ecology is really better expressed through poetry than it is through more prosaic. And so perhaps, if it's okay, I might share a Drew Dellinger poem, which I think really speaks to deep ecology, and it's called The Universe Jam. And it's also like a 3-minute version of the walk through time that Stefan's created. The flame has lit up the world from within. All things, individually and collectively, are interpenetrated and flooded by it. You who mould the manifold so as to breathe your life into it, I pray to you. The first verse of the universe, pours forth like a sea of mystery. Out of the void, unmanifest silence. Space-time comes into existence, unseen shaping, swirling, unfurling. Hydrogen, helium, divine is revealed within galactic whirlpools. As energy flows in, a star collapses, supernova explosion, a cloud of cosmic debris, drawn together by gravity, by the mystery of attraction, primordial bonding, universe action, stardust swirling, swarming gases, organizing and forming masses. See the sun as the one that spun the 9 others, give birth to Mother Earth and her sisters and brothers, Mercury, Venus, Mars and Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune and Pluto. Everyone is the sun. The sun is the one. Everyone. Everybody better wake up. And the earth gave birth to continents and oceans, shaping and shaking in waves of emotion, crashes of lightning, bombarding and striking, exposing the globe as it glows like a strobe, and setting the stage for the first cell of life. So simple, so basic, so primal that I place it at the top of the chain from which all life sprang. More forms adorn the earth as they bring diversity, dispersing the song of creation. Ring in the dawn, sing along in celebration. I just want to celebrate life. I just want to celebrate Earth. I just want to celebrate the cosmos. I just want to celebrate. The seas come alive, start to thrive with new life forms. Storms swept the planet, plants crept on granite enchanted by the sun's solar power. The earth gave birth to green leaves and flowers. Lava flows, mountains rose, tropical islands, forests and meadows, fed by the freshwater streams, the veins, heavenly rains drain back to the sea. The fish are set free as they swim onto sand. Fins turn to limbs and they limp onto land. Amphibians, reptiles, new styles of creature, seeing through new being the range of her features. The earth, your mother, gave birth to eyesight, looking within as she spins in the sunlight, on to the dawn, to the day of the dinosaur. Pterodactyl soars, Tyrannosaurus rex, towering, devouring. So who's up next? Mammals and primates, all life interrelated, divinely created. So don't you think it's time we celebrated? I just want to celebrate life. I just want to celebrate Earth. I just want to celebrate the cosmos. I just want to celebrate. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, my heart is singing. Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, there's a couple of questions that have come in through. I know that we have just maybe space for 1 or 2 questions here at this time. I will also encourage anyone, if you feel like answering any of these while we're going on, if there's other ones in the chat, to type in. But one of the questions that's come through said, I love the idea of deep questions. This is from Sharon Reesby saying, I love the idea of deep questioning She said, what is one deep question that has served you well? For me, it's how we're to live. That's the one that just keeps coming. I just keep coming back to that all the time. And there's so many layers to that to deepen and to experience and notice how other peoples live, how other species live, and to really drop into that. Like, what does it mean to be lifing? That question is my deep return to question all the time. I wonder if anyone else has one.
One of mine is, who are you who created all this? And where are you in me? And where am I in you?
Mm-hmm. Nice. John or Pat, did you want to add any other deep questions?
There's one that I have found useful for a long time, and it's in any moment or any circumstance, is to ask the question, what brings life? What takes life away?
I guess for me, it's more like how I ask the question that I'd like to talk about, because sometimes I get confused and lose my sense of purpose and lose the sense that I'm being lived by these forces that are directing me, you know, to the preservation of life, to the furthering of life. And when that happens, if I can, I find a place in the forest and I lie down and I cover myself in leaves and I just surrender to the earth, and I just allow my humanity to fade away as much as I possibly can. And then I get up and brush myself off. And after that, I just assume that my enthusiasms are the answer to the question that I've asked. I just allow my enthusiasm to guide me. So many possible things that I could do, so many things that need doing. How do you choose? And that's how I find the answer.
Beautiful. Thank you, John. I'd like to invite lovely Nina to Maya. Could you spotlight Nina? Come on in, Nina. And hey there.
Hi everyone. Hi, Morag. Thanks for the space. Hi, guys, for being here. I have one question related with deep commitments. So I would love to know if let's think you would be the face of change. I love this question. What could be one action that you would expect or you would take or recommend to others to take? Thinking about this relation between deep ecology and deep commitments. What it could be one action the others can get inspired and do from now or tomorrow. But it could be your recommendation.
Thank you, Nina. Would anyone like to tackle that question?
Well, I think for me, a couple of things. One is it's pretty obvious, really. Consume as little as you possibly can. So Arne would always talk about a vital need. You know, you walk past a shop and you see the latest smartphone. You really want it. Is it really a vital need? Is it a vital need for me to get on an airplane and go somewhere? You know, is it a vital need? The other thing is, I would, with my friend Helena Norberg-Hodge, I would recommend trying to create local economy, local agriculture, local communities. So localize as much as you can. Become a part of a movement for localization, low consumption, but high levels of happiness and connection with other people. Helena Norberg-Hodge is a person who's been pioneering that, also taught at Schumacher College many, many times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Stefan. Do Pat or John want to add anything there?
Okay, well, perhaps I'll just say that Joanna Macy speaks of this time as being the time of the great turning, and the great turning away from the industrial growth society and towards a life-affirming society. She sees three basic components to that great turning, different things that we can do, and all of which need to be done. It's not that there is any one thing that's more important. And so the first of these are the holding actions, the defense of the things that are being threatened, that the forests that are disappearing, the oceans, the animals, the languages, the indigenous peoples. The second is building the models of the world that we're looking for, even while the tail of the dinosaur is still thrashing around us, the permaculture, the transition towns, all of those things. And finally, there's the work on consciousness, meditation, deep ecology, these things. And so wherever you find yourself enthusiastic, there's 1,000 things that need to be done, and the one that's calling you is the right one.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a really beautiful response, which links into what Pat was saying before too, you know, about that the one that calls you is the one. And we often doubt it, don't we? You know, I bet you there's so many of you in the room have heard it whispering in your ears, or maybe, you know, on your shoulder, yelling at you, saying sometimes, where we go, no, I've got to do this, you know, this is the path, this is what we have to go about doing. So I think, yeah, listening to that calling.
I would go the next step then too, is to name it and share it, whatever it might be. And in the naming and the sharing, maybe just with one other person, or have a little core support group to help evolve, take it along. Because when we try to do it on our own, or we do it in our own thinking, we can just fall into our own traps and habits and not have a breakthrough. So I always encourage, when I've been doing any mentoring and I'm supporting people having an intention that they want to bring into the world, but it's too big, or it's too awkward, or too, it makes them change too much, is to have some other people around you and work, really let it speak through in the listening and the communication, and let it evolve. And you don't know where it's going to go. You don't know where it's going to take you. Mm-hmm. So that active listening, active sharing. And I'd also encourage, you know, what action would you take? Do some of this work, even just do a spiral with some of your friends. Get Active Hope, the book Active Hope, and look at some of the exercises. Just start somewhere. You can do it in half an hour. You can do it in an hour, and just evolve yourself.
There are so many questions and points of conversation in the chat. I would love to invite you to follow on from that, is to create a group, like as Pat just said, and start to ask these questions together, to read some of this material together, maybe start a study group, a discussion group, a garden group, a walking group, maybe do all those different things together with that group that you'd like to ask these deepening questions with. I'd like to maybe hand over to John now, because would you like to talk about the breathing that you were?
So Morag was asking whether there was anything experiential that we could do. And because Arne Naess called for community therapies to heal that illusion of separation, most of the work that we've been doing have been for processes that you need a circle of people for. But there's one that I find incredibly useful and that can be experienced very quickly. And for this, I invited you to bring a living plant into your space. It could be a plant in a pot, or it could be something outside a window that you're looking at. But 2,000 million years ago, some of our ancestors learned how to capture light from the sun and use the energy of that light to break CO2 up in order to extract the carbon to build their bodies. But in the process, inadvertently released oxygen into the oceans, a toxic poison to the anaerobic life of that time. For about 1 billion years, this poison didn't have a chance to wreak any havoc because there was so much iron dissolved in the oceans that each little bit of oxygen that was released in this way would immediately combine with some iron and fall to the floor of the ocean as one molecule of ferrous oxide, rust. And those single molecules have turned into the banded iron formations that we now see in the Kimberleys 2.5 kilometres deep. But eventually the oceans had been swept free and oxygen began to pile up, threatening all of life. And this crisis was averted by the ingenuity of other of our ancestors who learned to make a use of this oxygen, and that is by breathing it in. And this ancient cycle of partnership between the first of those creatures, the ancestors of the plants, and the second, the ancestors of the animals, has continued to this day. So the process that I find so helpful sometimes is to stand in front of a plant and to exchange gases consciously with that plant. With each out-breath, just allow yourself to feel abundance, to know that the gas that you are exhaling is exactly what that plant needs in order to live. And with each in-breath, feel gratitude and know that that plant is producing the oxygen that keeps you alive. And by adding consciousness to this exchange, which has been going on without pause for more than 1 billion years, but when we add consciousness to it, it pulls us into our ecological identity. It pulls us away from our merely social identity. So I see that we're running out of time, and so maybe I will suggest that rather than doing that now, I'll just hand it back to Morag and invite you in a few minutes' time when the screen goes black, that you could try that. I'll just say that it saved me from despair on many times. I'll just be walking with my head lowered and a single blade of grass peeking out from the cement will beckon to me, and I'll stop and I'll exchange gases with that plant, and it'll fix me right up. It's like a chiropractic adjustment. You should try it.
Thank you so much, John, for sharing that. And I encourage everyone to do it. And you've brought your plant, so do it straight away after this session. Maya, if you're there, if you could just recreate the rooms, because we were going to take you back to the same people, but I think there's some people have come and some people left, so we'll recreate those rooms. But I'd like to invite Pat to bring us together as in a closing gratitude. Thank you.
Okay, so are we going into rooms, or we're just doing it as a whole? I think that's just.
We could do it as a whole, actually, couldn't we? We could we could think about it and drop it into the chat. But maybe before we do that, because that's probably something just to land with, maybe we should just mention about the Hour of Power that we'll do as a follow-up, and also the project that you wanted to share. I might just start with the Hour of Power. We had the sense that there would be an interest in having a follow-up conversation around this. So we have created a time. I'm just looking at next week, on the 8th of August, same time to start, as a place to come together to follow up this, to really drop into our discussions and our understanding and exploring the cycle and working together on this. So, and to find out what it is that we would like to take forward, and to explore some of the questions that you've brought as well. So we would love you to come along to that. We will send you all the information as a follow-up invite. And John, did you want to mention the project you wanted to invite people to?
I'll add it to the email that you'll send everyone tomorrow. But basically, I'm looking for help from anyone in New South Wales to, it's basically anyone in Australia. There's a nationwide day of an end to native forest logging being organised by the Bob Brown Foundation around the 12th of August. And I'd like to invite people to participate in that. I'll be speaking at the Sydney rally, and there's rallies all over Australia. Please come along and help to put an end to the logging of native forests.
Thank you very much, John, and we will indeed share that with you all. And please share it with people that you know. I mean, part of this myceliation of this is us keeping on passing on whatever we find and inviting more people to join us. So I'm going to hand over to you, Pat.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we've been in a bit of a spiral, going from our gratitude through honouring our pain, seeing with new eyes, going forth, we've just been talking about, And just to complete this evening's spiral, maybe just close your eyes. Don't have to, but if you want to close your eyes and just let yourself be aware or invite. What is it that brings you joy about being alive? Alive to the beauty, the intelligence, the extraordinariness of this universe and of this human life. What brings you alive? What brings you joy right now? And what are you grateful for? And just letting that flow through you, just being with at any moment what brings you alive, what you're grateful for in your life, what you give thanks for. And just be with that. And know that that's with you at any point you want to call on it. And the gratitude is like nourishment to our roots and to our flourishing. Breathing it in, breathing it out, sharing with your plant, sharing with each other. And coming back to the whole group all around the world. Few people have gone, few people are still here. And deep thanks to Morag, John, Stefan, Maya, for all your help. Yeah, this is just the beginning. Don't know what else.
John, would you like to invite people to share in the chat?
Yeah, just that at the workshops, perhaps the most important piece are the sharing circles, where we find out how everybody else is feeling about, you know, we're noticing changes in ourselves, but a big part of it is just seeing what's happening to each other. And so I'm wondering whether we could take a couple of minutes where whoever wishes to can just share in the chat whatever's coming up for you now, how this has been for you, how you're feeling right now. And then when you receive an email with the recording of our session, there'll also be a document with the chat, and you'll be able to get a sense of the community that we've just created in this hour together.
Maybe while everyone is putting their thoughts in the chat, and thank you, keep it coming through. I'd love to, this is something we can share with everyone. Maybe just as one last word, as another layer of thoughts, as something that you've, as a closing comment from you. Maybe it's something that nourishes you, like what nourishes you on a daily basis, or right now even. What's your compost?
I just changed the setting. Any difference or not?
No, Zoom is
Well,
not playing. Zoom's not playing music with us today, Stefan.
Changed. Never mind.
I think Joanna talked about, even if we are seeing the great unraveling, keeping unraveling, and we hold the vision of the great turning and what each of us can contribute to that by keeping connected, by keeping engaged, by sharing it, we're giving it our best shot, whatever. And that's just to live it, giving it our best shot.
Yeah. Thank you, Pat. Thank you for being here. What's your compost, John or Stefan? What nourishes you? Oh, you're muted, John. Sorry, yeah.
I'm trying to balance my life between working for the future of the world in whatever way I can, and celebrating the universe and expressing my gratitude for what an amazing place this is. You know, that it doesn't seem right to forget about that. You know, it doesn't seem right to get too busy on campaigns and workshops and actions. You know, so yeah.
Thank you, John, and thank you for being here too. Stefan.
For me, it's a few things. One is walking up our little wild stream we have on a little piece of land here. So wild, even though it's in England, one of the most destroyed parts of the planet. We have a little piece of ancient rainforest, just tiny. When I'm there, I'm in the ancient world before humans disturbed Gaia, you know. Second are my friends. And third are the students and participants and everyone at Schumacher College, where I've had the honor to work for 33 years. Just lifts my heart, you know, with all these young people who are so committed to what we're committed to. It's really wonderful. And the last thing is my family and music.
Yeah. Thank you, Stefan. Thank you, John. And
What about you, Morag?
what about me? Oh gosh, well, my mind went to this place. It's the Mookaboolra River just down here. We're right in the very headwaters of what is now known the Mary River. And I go down there exploring most days for either a walk or just to sit. And the other day I found this amazing spot. I walked with my 10-year-old son and we just sat there and we explored and we played and the flow of the river, when the river is healthy, when the river is going, it gives me a sense of hope and refreshment. If I'm sitting here doing the work that I do and I need to find my space again and reconnect, it's down at the river. But like you, Stefan, it's my family and my friends. And you know, one thing that really, really nourishes my soul every day is being connected to this incredible community of people who are gathered here today and who gathered every day through the conversations that we host here. And I really wanted to thank all of you for being present and for taking your time to enter into this space of exploring your ecological self, deep ecology, permaculture, what it means for you in your place, in your life, in your community. So I really want to just acknowledge you all for, and yeah, like I said, every time I open up my email, my inbox, my whatever, and I see what you're doing and all the messages that are coming through and how you're supporting one another, I feel this great and deep sense of hope and possibility that we will be okay. Thank you everyone for being here. And super thanks again to Stefan, to John, and to Pat. What a special evening. We will be sharing out this recording, and all the chat and all the links will be coming to you sometime tomorrow once we've got it all together. And please feel free to share, and like we were saying, you know, find people where you are to continue this conversation, and come back on Tuesday to dive more deeply again as well. All right, thank you again so much all for being here, and I really appreciate you staying here. I know that we ran over a little bit of time, but it felt important to round our conversation here. All right, take care everyone.